Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning, friends. Good morning. By now we have come through 7 set of lectures, rather 7 weeks. Now we are on the 8th week, supposed to be the last week of this particular course. The course which attempted to discuss about the basics and fundamentals of the landscape architecture and site planning. There are many more things to learn, which will come over a period of time. Today's lecture I have slightly restructured. The restructuring is essentially for your advantage. If you recall the last week's lecture, in which I had promised that I will be discussing about the landform design and also the stormwater management. Now the stormwater management, this particular study in the landscape goes into the detail engineering. So later we deliberated on this and we thought, let us shift it to the advanced level when many of the issues will be discussed and how the drainage plan has to be done will be dealt with in detail. The brevity of time within these 8 weeks, what we had to cover, we have tried. But there are many more things to learn, lots more to learn. It is only, I would say, a tip of the iceberg. What I have learned, I have researched, I have taught, I have practiced, I have tried to share with you. There are many more things in between. There are many more experts, many more books. Here, the number of books that I have studied along with a research team is enormous. At the end of this, you will find a very brief list of bibliography or the reference books, which would be handy for you in case you get in touch with them. That will clarify many more things. But one thing I can assure you, that the way the entire discussion went on from the first lecture and it will go up to today's lecture, it is not structured in this manner in any of the books. It is the different quality of flowers that I got in different books, which I brought in and made a garland out of it. And there are many more details to come in the next level of lectures, the part 2, which will be dealing with the advanced application, which will be probably floated from August. Probably, it depends on our administrative system. So the stormwater management, I have shifted to that particular segment. At the end of this particular lecture, I will show you a slide in which what is to be expected in the next set of lectures, which is not yet advertised. There you will get a clue of what all else you are supposed to learn. Okay, today I am focusing on another very important issue, that is planting design. The planting design itself, this particular subject itself is a semester long subject. Here I have structured it in such a way that I touch upon various important issues introduced to you and you get the hang of it. Later on, maybe in the next stage of, or rather the part 2 advanced lecture, at that time I will be dealing more in detail with this in terms of its all essentials of plant sciences, how to maintain it, how to control the growth of the plants and many other issues. Okay, so here the planting design. So I am on this. First thing we have to understand that in a landscape planting design, why plants especially? If you look at the series of lectures that we have delivered as yet, you will find that the plants are one of the most large number of components or materials that cover the landscape. Any other items that you see within, they are small items. The structure, the paths, the fountains, all these are, I would say, with respect to the entire domain, they are small items. The entire domain is filled with greens. Greens means plants, vegetation. And that is why we need to really know that for planting design what we should do. First, I will discuss about the steps, some steps which you will follow. In this, first is you determine the objective of the landscape that you want to create. How do you determine? If you recall, I had already discussed that client will come to you with a request that he has a project, he has a site on which you have to develop a landscape design for him. Now, when you are going to design for him in that particular area, a limited domain, there are many issues like behavioral aspects which I have discussed in detail. I hope by now you have got the idea about it and you are liking it and definitely will be practicing it. But when you are thinking about the overall landscape, every aspect will come in: the users, the components, the plans, the arrangements, the objects, everything. Overarching thing is what the client wants. Client wants to build this as a pleasure garden. He wants a theme garden. He wants an environmental garden. Is the client an individual? Is the client a corporate? Is the client an authority, like say municipality or development authorities? These items are to be dealt. But when you have understood everything and now you have tried to design, so you are now designing an overall landscape plan. So once you have determined the objective of the overall landscape plan, then you prepare a total conceptual landscape plan. That means first is the overall. Once you have an idea what you want to do, what is expected from this particular project, what is expected by the clients, what's expected by the users. Now you prepare a total conceptual plan. The conceptual plan simply means that you are trying to make an idea about it. You are not detailing it at this moment. Detailing will come from different other aspects, like say for landform, a separate set of detailing. For stormwater management, a separate set of detailing. For irrigation purposes, separate set of detailing. For planting, a separate set. For pavements, a separate set. So what happens is there will be many more prongs or many more arms where you have to go for detailing. Here in this, in the planting design itself, you make an overall say concept plan. Once you make the overall concept plan, then you make a plantation layout plan to achieve the objective. What happens is, say in the whole area, suppose you are deciding that the plants will be used for shading. Now where to shade? Is it the entire site will be shaded? No. There are certain components in the site which will be shaded, and the components which are going to be shaded, that you identify and then decide that how would be the shading pattern, what time of the day do you really require the shading. Then accordingly you decide the plantation. So you now start doing the layout of the plants of different forms. So you have an objective. Now you know the plant as a component which is going to solve your problem, and now you are arranging it. Okay, and then once you have decided that okay, this is how I'm going to make a shading of it, you did not really decide about the plant at that point of time. Now you are making a selection of plant material, that which plant will best suit this. And let me just draw an example for you on my sketchbook here. See, you require a place, a road which needs to be shaded. You may select a tree here which will be shading, casting a shade on this. Now you have your objective fulfilled. Fine. It can also be attained by another tree which is of this type, which is also shading, isn't it? So the point is, in the third step, when I'm saying the layout of the plant materials in this, basically what I'm trying to say is that what you require, shading. And in the fourth step, what I'm saying is select the plant which will be best suited for the shading. Now there could be different kind of plants. When I'll go into the discussions of this, you'll see that how I'll be revealing to you the nitty-gritties of these plants and its characters which will serve the best for your different objectives. Now if this is true that you have one tree here, another tree here, both are serving the same purpose, and you have this as a shaded portion, now which one will you select? That's the question. And here we don't leave it to the arbitrariness. Everything is very, very scientifically and objectively decided. You just simply don't decide because I like it. No, it's not you like it. It is what about the shading that you want to have, what is the extent of shading that you want to have, and what is the depth of shading. That means, is it fully shaded or is it semi-shaded, or it is not at all shaded. Depending on that, you will select either this or this. So there are some ways of doing it. So when you will be selecting your plant materials, then you make the arrangements. See, originally when you made the layout, basically what you did is you very roughly placed it and try to understand, okay, this is the area which I need the sheds. Let's take an example of an avenue, which I'll be discussing in my second part of the lecture series very much in detail, but at this moment I'm just citing an example that, okay, I have this particular road which is to be shaded because it's in a hot arid zone, and the shading of the roads, it reduces the reflected radiation, first of all incident radiation, and then anyway reflected radiation by virtue of the thermal heat that it is storing by itself and then radiating upwards if you want to reduce it. So objective wise you are just saying, okay, this particular road will have a series of plants or series of trees on either side, fine, no problem. Then how you place it, really you have selected, but it is not one selection, like say it is not one tree that is going to serve your purpose. It may be a bundle of trees that you do require for doing this. If had it been only one tree, in such case your landscape would become monotonous, so you don't want it. You want a variety as well as the purpose served. So when you are going to go for it, so what you do is you select the plant materials, now you arrange it. When you are arranging it, there are certain rules, there are certain protocols, and there are certain scientific protocols which you have to follow. I will discuss one by one. Okay, so you now arrange the plants on the site, and then once you have done it, that means for the entire site, I said it's a small area, no, for the entire site, for different purposes of different zones, you have selected the plant materials, you made the arrangements and all. Once you are satisfied with it, you discuss with the clients. You may be discussing with some of the users, probable users, and take their feedbacks and ultimately rearrange, reorganize, because nothing can be really at one shot finalized, and it is always better to have the participation of the users who are finally going to enjoy it or experience it, and naturally the customer or client who is going to pay for the whole thing. So once you take this, you have arranged it, you have decided the plant materials, now you have to give a prescription in terms of specifications. That specification for execution and maintenance, which is listed over here, basically is just like doctor prescribing a medicine. It's something like this. Let me take the analogy from the medical sciences. You go with a kind of problem, a physical problem of yours, you go to the doctor. Doctor listens to you very patiently. He hears every aspects of it, every complaints of yours, and then every location where your problem is. Okay, then he makes his own judgment that, okay, this may be the cause. So he diagnoses. Once he diagnoses, means basically he has understood the problem. That right diagnosis will lead to a very quick recovery. So right diagnosis on your part is nothing but right objectives, and the solutions now will lie in the selection of the medicine that the doctor is selecting. There are a host of medicines which are being manufactured. Now doctor is only picking a few medicines and saying that, okay, you take this for this time and this number. Basically what he is doing is he is prescribing not only the medicine, he is also prescribing to what degree you are supposed to take, what frequency you are going to take, and also for how many days you are going to take. If you see this analogy, your landscape design is similar. You are deciding about the objective to be served, whatever. What objectives, on what criteria we generally make selections, I'll come to that in this series of discussions. Once you have selected this, from the users you are trying to find out that what are they expecting, because they are going to the users. From the client you are trying to find out what he is expecting to offer through his expenses, because ultimately the client is going to pay, whether it's corporate, individual, or even public authorities, they are going to pay. Once this is decided, now you are prescribing, so you are now going to say exactly which tree or which plant, how many number, where it is located, at what spacing, and then what should be the size of it, what should be the scale of it when you bring it and plant it there. Is it a fresh plant with a sapling that you are giving, or is it a cutting that you are bringing, or you are bringing a half grown tree, or you are transplanting the full trees? Everything has to be declared by you absolutely methodically. There should be no ambiguity. There should be no confusion to the contractor who is going to execute your project. So in this, what happens is specification for execution and maintenance. If you take note of it, you will see that I've added maintenance. What happens is, most often the landscape is created very painstakingly, very excitedly by the landscape designer and also the authorities, the client. And then finally they find that over a period of time it requires a good amount of maintenance to keep this landscape the way they dreamt of. Now once you are taking this into consideration, you have to really you are giving a shape not only at one point of time, at the time of execution. You also have to retain the shape of that particular landscape over a long period of time. How long? Till the end of the life of this particular landscape garden, unless it is changed by its land use. Or else, if you see historic gardens that I was referring to, they are still living. How many years? 300, 400 years. How many years? Even more than that. That means the landscape never has an age really. You do not know that whether this particular landscape is going to live much longer or is going to wither away or die its own death because of whatever reasons. So the point is, if you are making one landscape, it is not one shot attempt that you build it and then get rid of it. No. You have to, as a landscapist, tell them exactly, prescribe very methodically and meticulously what is to be done once it is constructed, executed. So this specification for execution and maintenance is very, very important. Then comes the execution and the construction. If you rightly specify what is to be done during execution stage and also specify what is to be done during maintenance stage, then it is good. The contractor will execute or construct the whole thing the way you want it. And in fact, just like any other manufacturing, I'll tell you, manufacturing or construction, there is no chance of changing a bit unless the landscape designer says it. Yes. That means there has to be, I'll suggest that if you are practicing landscape architecture, then please insist on reviewing it periodically. That means supervise it periodically, and don't leave any opportunity in terms of ambiguity in your specification or BOQs. You remember I discussed in the initial classes the or BOQs, bill of quantities, in the schedules, any opportunity for the contractor to do whatever he wishes within the legal ambit. Don't allow. Now, if you rightly specify, in this case, if I am focusing on the planting design, then what I am trying to say is you specify the species, specify its location, specify its placement, distance between a pair of plants, specify about what maintenance has to be taken care of, means how it is to be grown. You must have seen quite often, just I am trying to draw one for you, quite often you must have seen in many of the urban areas, there is a tree which is likely to grow and the tree is being encased within a tree guard, which may also is called gabion. Okay? Now, the tree guard, in which you must have seen from the soil, there is a narrow lanky-panky tree which is now standing like this. You must have seen this quite often. If suppose it's a freshly planted trees, what is going to happen to this in future? In future, the whole tree, actually I don't have space here on the sheet, but let me try it here. In future, the whole tree is going to grow to a large height. Once it is going to grow to the large height, this particular tree guard will be removed. Why the tree guard was there? First, the tree guard was there because at this point of time when your tree was young, at that point of time, if you don't protect it from the cattle, then this is going to die its own death. Number two is that not only cattle, even vandals, nobody should be able to access that particular tree. So you are making a protection, and this is during the construction stage itself. So what you do is, in your construction document, there should be provisions for these kind of tree guards, and there also would be instructions that how long this tree guard should be there. After that, the tree guard is removed, because the contractor has to pay for execution of this and charge you for this. And later on, when you are removing it, that goes, either it becomes recycling used, and that is the best possible way, or else it is thrown away. Now, once the tree guard is removed, the tree is now bare. It is now accessible to the cattle and vandals. If such things happen, then how the tree is going to survive? So you have to prescribe, you have to really specify to that much detail. Let me tell you very frankly, the landscape projects that is commonly being held, the very, very methodical landscape designers, they take really very strong action in favor of this. But the common landscaping documents that I have seen, these are not very much well structured. They are there. In the BOQ it is there. But the thing is, it's not very well structured. At least the spec, I'm not talking about the schedule, I'm talking about the spec. The specifications, in that specification is not very well structured that way in terms of quality. Okay, and then finally the maintenance. Here you are specifying for execution and also you are specifying for maintenance. So all specifications for executions will be followed during this particular stage, and all specification for maintenance which is now perennial, continuous, and whether it is regular or periodic. It depends on what kind of plans you are selecting, what kind of, I'm focusing on planting design here, not on the overall landscape, just plans. What kind of plans you have selected, what is the kind of protection it needs to be given, what is the kind of maintenance that has to be given, how frequently it is to be given, and what nutrition it has to be given, the water, light sources, everything has to be taken care of with respect to the plans. But it is only possible, let me tell you, if you know about the plans. All these are very easily said, but do you really know the plant? If you don't know the plant, then you really don't know what is to be done for its maintenance, what is to be done for its execution or construction, or even planting at that particular point. This is why the planting design has a very strong component about knowing about the plants and its characteristics. Because basically, you think about it, the plant that you are selecting over here, it is a component, and that component will have its existence over there, and this will have a mass, it will have a volume, it will have a life, it will have height, spread, all other aspects. Also, it has many attributes which you are trying to exploit and explore and exploit. These attributes, if you don't know, then I'll tell you it will become a very arbitrary plantation plan or plantation design or planting design, whatever we call it. I like the term called planting design, not plantation design, planting design. The first time when I heard it, actually I heard it through a book called Planting Design by Brian Hackett. If you see that, if you read that particular book, it gives a very nice idea about how the planting design has to be done. And if you have to go for real planting design, then you have to understand how it is to be handled. Okay, so now I'm just recapping. When you are trying to go for the steps in planting design, you know the overall objective, then you make a concept plan, and then you prepare the layout, conceptual layout, and then you select the plant materials to best suit for the purposes in different domains, and then you arrange the plans, and then you specify exactly, you select the plans, then you arrange the plans, and then you specify that how it is to be executed or constructed or laid in the site, and then later how it is to be maintained, specification, and then the next step is execution, and the next step is maintenance. I'll tell you, if you take this as a profession and truly followed by as a profession, then it's a wonderful profession by which you can create miracles, because it has many, many values of attaining this. Here I come to a point. If I'm selecting a plant, see, the main problem is that I have to select a plant. If I have to select the plant, I need to know the plant. So there is a multi-criteria approach to this. Multi-criteria, why? There are multiple criteria which are going to be affecting your selection. How will you go ahead with it? Let me just try to explain to you. See, you have determined the overall objective of the landscape creation, what you want. It may be visual creation. Like, say, you want something to be looking good. That means the whole landscape has to look good. So one criterion is visual criterion. Okay? Means it should look good. Now, I will give the set of criteria here, but then I will go back to the details of each one of them to the extent that is required for you to understand it. So visual criterion, if I take, that means the client comes to you with an idea, I want to make a landscape which should look very nice. In fact, I'll tell you all the historical examples that I have cited so far, except the Spanish and some Mughal. Rest of all the landscapes, they were all on visual criterion. It should look attractive, it should look good, and the visitors should like it, they should be exclaimed with it, they should say wow, all visual criterion. Now, there is no question or no contesting of which one is more important. Visual, okay. Aesthetics is supreme here. This is one set of criterion. There may be another set of criterion, that is functional criterion. Means you want to do the landscaping, you are making the selection of the plant materials based on what is the function of that plant. Look may be an additional bonus, but the thing is, what should be the function of this? Once you see that what is the function of this, then you make a selection accordingly. And then a set which is environmental criterion. You may decide that this landscape in this particular area, I'll do it for environmental amelioration. It is environmentally degraded, it has environmental issues, it has environmental menaces. I want to ameliorate that. Means I want to remove those all kind of negatives and bring environmental comfort to this particular landscape. You make a selection based on that. Then economic criterion. I want to do this landscape which should be serving some of the purposes, maybe looking good, at the same time it should be giving me some revenues. I will come to this in detail. It should be, that means revenue generating landscapes. I'll tell you, it is, I always try to promote the idea that if you are doing a landscape, then all these multiple criteria that I am listing over here, they should be all looked into. Whatever may be your prime criteria, you will look into this and you will decide. Okay? And then the next is cultural criterion. Cultural criterion is very a different thing. Cultural criterion is the plants grow in natural setting. If you see all over the earth, there are multiple kinds of plants, types of plants, but all plants don't grow in all places with the equal vigor or equal sustainability. No, they don't. The reason is that since soil, water content, superficial humidity, solar radiation, everything matters into the survival and growth and survival of that particular plant, then that determines the culture of that particular plant. Some plants which grow very well and survive in the cold climates are highly susceptible to withering or death or decay in the arid climate. Some plants which are very strong, very good in arid climate may not really survive that healthily in the temperate climate. So when we see about the climates, the arid, tropical, temperate, when we try to say whichever way we try to explain our climatic zones, you will find that each plant has its own cultural conditions. Let me just draw an analogy with human culture. See, the thing is, we belong to different regions. Me, you, others, everybody is belonging to originally from different regions where we have different languages, we have different food habits, different dress habits, different traditions, and different culture. When we say culture, basically if you see, it's an agglomeration of all these: the eating habits, the sleeping habits, the talking, the manifestations, the beliefs which came from tradition. So culture is basically a reflection of the root of origin of that particular plant. So whenever you are taking the cultural criterion into consideration, you have to be very, very sensitive and cautious. In fact, it is always better that when you select the plant materials, you do first with cultural criterion. I'll come to that in detail. And there is another criterion, that is operational criterion. You like a tree which may be serving well for an objective, but the thing is, operationally that may not be very, very good in terms of the context where you are trying to plan. Now, I'll go into the detail in my next set of lectures. What I'm trying to say is, you first determine the prime objective of the landscape creation, what you want. Out of these, say there are 6 I have listed, 6 criteria I have listed. You first decide which one is the prime one. So process is this: for the overall landscape creation, you decide about the prime one, and the next, then the next, then the next. An example, let me tell you. Suppose I want to create a landscape for environmental reasons, okay, with the environmental criterion. So everything with respect to environment, I'm going to see whether it's satisfying. But I also want something which is solving my environmental problem is also functional. So I'll think about the functional the next. And if it is solving my environmental problems and also becoming functionally most appropriate, I would now like to see, cross-check them with respect to are they looking good. So basically these are nothing but sieves. So what you do is, the first sieve, out of these 6 you decide the first sieve. After the first sieve, you have a host of trees at your inventory in that location. So whatever comes in falls here, like these are the set that I'm selecting. Now you bring it to the next sieve, like say environment is your first sieve, all the trees that is solving your problem environmentally selected. Then all the trees that is now selected, sorted, out of that you check which are functionally now becoming appropriate, further sieve it. Now that is functionally and environmentally suitable. Now you check with respect to your visual, sieve it. Now you have things which are all 3 taken care of. Then you check whether they have the economic value, select them, sort them, and then you check whether they are operationally all right. But above all, I'll tell you, whatever you do, I always suggest that you take the cultural criterion first. That means you find out those plants which are going to grow in this location and locality. I'll discuss this more in my next lecture. Please wait for it. I hope you're enjoying it. We'll go to the next lecture. Thank you.